at these 16 different possible futures and we try to look for agreement amongst them, if you take any one of those projections, and we know that they're imperfect, but we know that the possible future that we're going to face is more like one of them than the average of all the 16. And we see, when you look at any one of the future projections, pretty drastic changes in fire that are pretty rapid. And so it forces us to, I think, take climate change and fire a little bit more seriously. It's going to mean that there are going to be some big changes that are going to affect all of the things that we rely on: water supplies, food sources, and we have to learn to live with fire like we've learned to live with earthquakes and floods and so on. Instead of fighting fire, which is the main way we view fire, we have to learn to accommodate it and coexist with it.
Is there any sense from the models that this trend could be reversed?
Most of the models that we have used here assume a certain emission scenario, and so another good lesson from this is that if you look at the lower emissions scenarios, you see less changes in the differences in fire activity. So yes, we do have the ability to possibly do something about this, but it means getting a handle on greenhouse gas emissions and taking climate change more seriously.
Well, Max, thank you for explaining your work.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Max Moritz is on the faculty at the University of California, Berkeley's College of Natural Resources.
Coming home.
Hey, that's very good news.
All right, where are you?
We are on Shooting Grove, get on to the highway to come home too.
Very good. So what do you want to do?
Give you a hotline to you.
You will, I'm sure, but what else?
I have a button that book.
All right, well, my phone's about to die, so I don't know why, but I gotta hang up very soon.
Okay, well, I'll see you when you get back, and then we can, I'll be thinking about it, you be thinking about it.
Okay.
All right, love you.
Love you too, bye.
Bye.
I don't know what you're talking about. Was that me?
I think that they don't think it's someone else in the car.
Nope, it's just maybe the radio.
Well, no, they said they heard a low voice at any time.
It must have been the radio because I turned the radio off when I picked up the phone. My phone's about to die.
People, make sure you're careful to not have a ghost in the car.
Okay, I love you.
Check the back seat. Love you too. Bye.
I need the ghost whisperer. Bye.
From the beginning, I thought the story sounded strange. Two things were that Duke Devon is not the type of unit that normally gets into firefights. They're meant to be quiet, undercover. And the second was that it happened in Ramoon, an area that has never been known for violence or militant activity.
She says that at first, she was told that the Army had not launched an investigation into the incident and wasn't planning to. She says she was also told that the Army had been in Ramoon on a training exercise, not a mission. Neil Osirian, a spokesman for the Palestinian NGO Al-Haq, said that what the Army was doing in Ramoon is only one of the questions his organization has posed to the Israeli military.
There's a clear principle under international humanitarian law that military forces cannot, under any circumstances, feign civilian status. Okay, and that's to do so is known as perfidy.
Al-Haq and the Israeli human rights group B'Tselem both filed complaints with the Israeli military. But the details of that night may forever remain murky. A study conducted by the Israeli human rights group Yesh Din last year found that approximately 94% of criminal investigations launched by the military against Israeli soldiers for violence against Palestinians are closed without any indictments. For NPR News, I'm Shira Frankel.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Good evening. At 4:49, under mostly cloudy skies, it's 81 degrees in Northeast Washington. This is WAMU 88.5. I'm your host, Pat Brogan. Checking the roadways once again. Here's Dave Solomon. Good evening, Dave.
Good evening, Pat. The loop of the Beltway is heavy. Old Georgetown Road going up to Connecticut Avenue on the outer loop is crowded 210 to St. Barnabas Road. Northbound 395 heavy between 110 and Ohio Drive, and northbound Route 1 and 395 some heavy traffic. Eastbound 66, that's a slow ride. Peaceburg Pike going up to Westmoreland Street. And southbound South Capitol Street slows down between 295 and M Street. I'm Dave Solomon.
WAMU 88.5 and Wolf Trap are giving away tickets to see the NSO perform Broadway Rocks Friday, July 6th. More information is at WAMU.org. Just look under events.
When you include WAMU 88.5 in your will, you're helping to ensure that fact-based, independent journalism, the hallmark of public radio, is here for years to come. To learn more and to see our new online will planner, go to WAMU.org and click on support.
Coming up tonight at 6 on Marketplace, colleges are admitting more students from their wait lists. That signals about higher education, and why the market for high-end private jets is doing well and is expected to get stronger even in the current economy. Those stories and much more starts at 6 on Marketplace. Cloudy skies, now 81 degrees in southwest Washington at 4:50.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Melissa Waugh. And I'm Audie Cornish. A full year after Missouri River floodwaters ravaged homes, businesses, and farms in the Great Plains, the cleanup goes on, as does a battle over how to prepare for future floods. Some want the Missouri controlled for navigation. That means more water held back upriver. But others, who need to protect endangered species, want the river to flow more freely. Iowa Public Radio's Clay Masters has the story.
Sioux City sits along the Missouri River in northwest Iowa. The channel is straightened and controlled up here to keep barges moving along the river down south. Jim Redmond is with the Northwest Iowa Sierra Club and thinks the Missouri River is just too industrialized.
The water that fell up in North Dakota and Montana and South Dakota, that's something that the river can handle, but not when you create all these handicaps in the channel and cut the channel off from the floodplain.
You know, and we fare better than a lot of people. A lot of people's houses are destroyed.
this house isn't destroyed, but we've completely, this was all covered with mold, we've stripped it out. Ryan Johnson farms near Percival, Iowa, in the very southwestern corner of the state. He lost 95% of the 1,500 acres he farms. Out here, there are piles of river bottom sand and silt, some stacked 20 feet high. Dry green leaves of corn and soybeans are sprouting in rows of what looks like beach sand. There has not been an economic impact study done on what happened to the flood last year. And we think those numbers are in the billions of dollars. Johnson says the impact goes beyond farmers. Numerous businesses were hit just as hard when the Missouri flooded. Some have joined to form a group called Responsible River Management, seeking a bigger voice in how the Missouri is managed. Johnson's group wants more water stored in reservoirs up north. But that kind of control is up to the Army Corps of Engineers, which manages all the dams and levees along the river, and the Corps takes its orders from Congress. Johnson's group argues that too many management decisions are based on 3 endangered species dependent on the river: 2 birds, the least tern and piping plover, and a fish, the Pallet sturgeon. His Sierra Club's Jim Redmond says the sturgeon are amazing.
This is like a 6-foot fish that lives to 100 years old. It's a magnificent species. People don't pay attention to it because it's rare, for one thing. They haven't seen one. It's too easy to grab onto something like that and say, we're spending 60 million, 70 million on this, for the Pallet sturgeon, piping plover, and leaf tern. Are you kidding me? My house is somewhere in St. Louis right now.
That's Bill Smith, president of the Missouri Valley Waterfowlers Association. He's also a subcontractor and has repaired dozens of flooded homes in northwest Iowa. But there are still more parties fighting on this river. David Seek farms along the river and serves as vice chair of the Missouri River Recovery Implementation Committee, a group representing local, state, tribal, and federal interests here.
This flood has caused some ripples in our texture again, in our fight to save the species. Cooler heads need to prevail. We need to think this through. That being said, a lot of groups and their voices aren't perceived to have been heard or listened to. They go back home and rally their troops and do what they have to do to protect their interests. If the people of the basin can't agree how to fix the problems with the species, and then we go back to the way we used to do it, which is the courts decide, and it's not good for anybody.
And the fight continues with a push to pull over river channels, water levels, and how best to prevent another bad flood on a river that flows through 7 states. For NPR News, I'm Clay Masters.
Yesterday was Hatchet Day at the New Orleans Times-Picayune, and 3 Alabama newspapers, all owned by the same company. About 600 people found out they were being laid off. In New Orleans, nearly half the Times-Picayune newsroom is being let go. What this means is that the city will no longer have a daily paper. They'll publish 3 times a week. The focus will shift online to the website NOLA.com. Taking it all in is Times-Picayune reporter Mark Schleifstein. He's been with the paper for 28 years and shared in 2 Pulitzer Prizes the paper earned for its coverage of Hurricane Katrina. Mark, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
And you are among the lucky ones, I gather. You still have your job, right?
I have been offered a position in the new corporation and am considering the offer.
Well, what was the scene like yesterday as so many of your friends and colleagues were called in and told they're gone?
I actually refer to it online as sort of Katrina without the water. It was very disconcerting and very emotional. There was a lot of crying and a lot of hugging, and people streamed in all day long to meet with individual editors who provided them with a packet that was either a job offer, like mine was, or was a severance package that gave them the news as to whether or not they would still be around.
There was a video posted online at NOLA.com by the paper's editor, Jim Amos, and he said that newspapers that don't serve a digital audience risk a slow death. Let's listen to some of what he said.
We won't retreat from our commitment to be a watchdog of local government. We won't retreat from doing significant investigative journalism. We won't retreat from being the dominant news source for our communities. Those are our promises, and we know that you'll hold us to them.
Mark Schleifstein, what do you make of those promises?
I'm hoping we're able to do that, or I'm hoping the new product is able to do that. We're really going to have to figure out whether or not we can keep our audience once they see what the products are that we're able to produce. And what those products are is what the real question is. And it's something that us in the newsroom still do not have a decent handle on. And Jim Amos did tell me today that he is planning on having meetings with staffers this week in which he will provide them with more information and actually request their input into what those products should contain.
Is anybody there looking at other cities around the country that have gone to this model of 3 newspapers a week and have made it work?
We've been watching it elsewhere, whether it's in Michigan with the other Newhouse newspapers, or in places like Detroit, where other companies have tried a similar sort of a strategy. I'm not quite sure that we're seeing success yet.
A lot of people, Mark, will remember that during Katrina, the Times-Picayune was able to keep publishing under just heroic circumstances by its staff. What do you think it means to the city to not have a daily print newspaper anymore?
People are upset about. There's a lot of emotion about this idea that we're going to become a 3-day-a-week kind of product. I don't know how we're going to be able to get over that as the new corporate entity goes forward. Is how do we keep our readers? How do we keep the public? How do we continue to provide them with the service that is news? And how do we also keep our advertisers happy in such a way that we're able to survive financially?
Mark Slevstein, good to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Mark Slevstein is a reporter with the New Orleans Times-Picayune, which yesterday laid off 200 employees, including nearly half of the newsroom. You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR member stations and from the estate of Joan Kroc, whose bequest serves as an enduring investment in the future of public radio. From James and Nikki Grant, in appreciation of NPR's coverage of global events. From the Avis Family Foundation, celebrating public media and their audiences who give to their favorite stations every year. And from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, dedicated to the idea that all people deserve the chance to live healthy, productive lives, and gatesfoundation.org. This is NPR. Good evening. You're listening to All Things Considered on WAMU 88.5. It's 4:59 and 81 degrees. In our weather, partly cloudy tonight with a low of 58, partly sunny tomorrow with a high of 79. Mostly cloudy tomorrow evening, then becoming partly cloudy and a low of 57 expected.
On the next Metro Connection, we'll be up all night from a local hospital to a 24-hour diner. We'll visit spots where Washingtonians spent their wee small hours wide awake. Join us Friday afternoon at 1 here on WAMU 88.5. Support for WAMU 88.5 comes from REI, committed to providing advice and gear for your summer adventures. Outdoor gear for camping, cycling, hiking, or running at an REI near you or rei.com.
This is member-supported public radio from American University, WAMU Washington, where the mind is our media. In HD at 88.5 and WRAU 88.3 in Ocean City, Maryland, and streaming at WAMU.org. It's 5 o'clock.
Although J.P. Morgan enjoyed a strong reputation for effective risk management, something obviously went very wrong.
Questions for the chair of J.P. Morgan Chase about the bank's $2 billion trading loss. It's Wednesday, June 13th, and this is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Melissa Block. And I'm Audie Cornish. Jamie Dimon was on Capitol Hill explaining that trading loss. He said we let a lot of people down. Also, a way to reduce the number of bird deaths from collisions with communication towers. What scientists have found by studying the trillions of microorganisms that live all over our bodies.
The human we see in the mirror is made up of more microbes than human.
And Mitt Romney's tenure as governor of Massachusetts.
He raised the expectation bar so high that, he just didn't deliver.
But first, this news.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Spear. The Justice Department is walking away from its case against John Edwards. Federal prosecutors have announced they will not retry the former Democratic presidential candidate on campaign finance charges. NPR's Carrie Johnson reports the decision comes soon after the jury was unable to reach a verdict in the case.
Government lawyers asked Judge Catherine Eagles to dismiss the case with prejudice, meaning they will not take another bite at the apple and try to resurrect their high-profile prosecution. About 2 weeks ago, a federal jury in Greensboro, North Carolina, found John Edwards not guilty on one campaign finance charge. Jurors couldn't reach a decision on 5 other counts that covered payments Edwards had accepted from friends to support his pregnant mistress. Several jurors said they simply did not believe the government's central witness, Andrew Young, an aide who idolized Edwards and then grew disillusioned with him. Carrie Johnson, NPR News, Washington.
Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta says the U.S. is spending an additional $100 million a month because Pakistan has closed its border to supplies for troops in Afghanistan. Pakistan closed the border for such supplies last November after 24 soldiers were accidentally killed by U.S. troops. As NPR's Larry Abramson reports, Panetta said Congress should not cut off U.S. aid to Pakistan.
The Pentagon has refused to release exact figures on the cost.